This is Fraser Anderson, analyst at Vestigo Ventures. I'm here with Matt Beecher, CEO of Vault, formerly Student Loan Genius. Hello, Matt.
Hey, Fraser, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Very well, thanks. And how are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Excellent. So today we're going to talk about Vault and how you guys are solving problems in a highly regulated space, that being kind of 401k and employee benefit plans.
Super.
Yeah, awesome. So could you talk a little bit about sort of how student debt levels have impacted 401k plan participation and some of the problems this is causing for both millennials and employers?
Yeah, look, I mean, you know, the reality of it is I think we have a pretty significant problem in the United States as it relates to retirement savings or the lack thereof. You know, before I joined Vault as both an investor and CEO, you know, I had sort of a growing thesis around how do you sort of solve the retirement savings crisis, you know, in the US, and particularly amongst, you know, a pretty sort of significant population of the workforce. You know, let's just call that millennial Gen Z, but anyone that's under the age 38, right, for the most part. And, you know, I don't know the exact statistics, but it's something like, you know, the majority of folks have around $2,000 or so of retirement savings, right? So that's a big, big problem. And that's a massive sea change from even the generation prior. So you kind of dig deeper into that and you look for, well, what is driving that? Why does that exist? And, you know, there's a lot of sort of theses out there, and there's, you know, companies going after, well, it's just bad product, right? You have huge incumbents that have gotten lazy, and 401k products aren't very dynamic. Therefore, people aren't participating in it. And there's a whole, you know, avenue of folks that are trying to create the new 401k, you know, paradigm. And I think that's wonderful and great. And that's using technology, you know, to sort of do some great things. But the reality of it, there's really kind of three drivers that are kicking, you know, the lack of retirement savings. One, you know, we have wage stagnation in the United States, and that's been true since 1970 on. You know, wages just haven't increased, or said differently, they have, but the cost of living has sort of exceeded that growth. So you have less money to put in retirement plans. Two, you know, employers are now sharing, you know, huge percentages of healthcare costs with employees. Not only that, they're doing it via highly deductible health insurance plans. So that puts a huge sort of impediment on free capital or free cash flow as it relates to sort of the American workforce. And then the last big thing here is student debt. And student debt has existed for forever. I mean, it's not a new concept, but what is new is sort of the escalation of that, the average balances, and the population that it consumes, right? So, you know, I think back to when I went to school, when I got out of college in the early 90s, and I financed 100% of my education at a private college in Boston, Massachusetts. And, you know, I got out and I, you know, with $30,000 or thereabouts of student debt, which is a huge amount. And remember my first job out, I made $30,000. So, you know, I had this, you know, 1-to-1, you know, debt to income ratio, 100% debt to income ratio, but it was manageable. I felt like I could deal with this. It was burdensome, but it wasn't, you know, anything that I didn't think I could sort of get over. You fast forward that scenario to today, and, you know, you're talking about, you know, the same exact circumstances. You're talking about now somebody leaving college with $150,000, $160,000 worth of debt, assuming they finance 100% of it, and maybe they're making 50 grand a year. So it's a much, much different scenario. So, you know, while when I got out, I could contribute to my retirement savings plan and I could contribute to my 401k plan. And I worked for a company that was very paternalistic, saying, Matt, you have to do this. It's really important. It's so important. We're going to put a match in place as well. I think those days are gone, right? They've passed us by. And, you know, I think the reality of it is we hit full employment in the United States. Companies now are circling back saying, ooh, wait a minute, the paradigm or the pendulum has shifted here. People aren't staying at my company very long. Why is that? It's because the benefits aren't matching up. So it's a long way of saying, look, you know, there's a lot of things that are contributing, but student debt for us is core to being a major impediment to retirement savings amongst the growing population of the US workforce, which are millennials, Gen Z, which comprise, depending on what reports you read, anywhere from 45 to 55% of the American workforce. So it's a massive problem. It's not even a massive sort of economic problem. It's a massive social problem. What happens 20, 30, 40 years from now when, we are graduating, a whole generation of people into retirement? That definition is going to change, but we graduate them into retirement with very little retirement savings. Or said differently, no real estate or no property, right? So all of this sort of drives home ownership or the lack thereof. I think I read a report, a while ago that said something like 95% of Americans' retirement savings come from capital gains, which is from the sale of a primary residence.
Yeah.
So we have like this really bad thing. If people aren't buying houses, they're not saving for retirement. There is no fuel to sort of support, any type of retirement, behavior over the long term. So look, I mean, now I'm really on a soapbox, but you sort of get the point here. This is massively problematic, and sort of the symptoms of it all are from the employer side, of the ledger, and that sort of relationship has to change. At least that's our thesis.
Well, that was an extremely comprehensive answer. I appreciate that. But now for the bright side, how's Vault solving these problems? What are you guys doing specifically to address these?
Yeah, so we look at the market, and again, with all those theses, behind us and knowing what we have to do, we're centered on really sort of the simplicity of, how do we do a couple of things? And even though we're focused on student debt, that's a really, really sort of big, piece of what we're doing. We're really helping companies, change the conversation with their employees. So how do they create a deeper connection with their employee base by offering benefits that actually matter? And, how do they keep people in seats longer? So even though we're a technology company, even though we're focused on student debt, I tell folks all the time, we're actually in the gain and retain business. We're in the business of how do we change conversation between employer and employee by offering benefits that actually matter, in this case, student debt. And how does that sort of translate to keeping someone in a seat at a company for more than 18 months, which tends to be the turnover rate. So that's really where our focal point is. And we've built a technology platform around that supports the ability for an employer to offer student debt repayment, that is actually give an employee a monetary benefit to help pay down their student loans directly, and student debt management tools, which allows that end user, that employee, to manage an incredibly complex and opaque world of student debt.